Try again. Take 2. Hopefully this is coming through loud and clear and the stream is working. You can hear me, see me, and all that good stuff. We literally just started the stream a minute ago or 5 minutes ago, whatever it was, and it froze on our end. So the video froze, the audio froze. The chat was still working, but everything else froze. So we're going to do a take 2 to see if this is working. All right. Is this coming through loud and clear? If it is, let me know. Loud and clear. I can hear you. I can hear you. Okay, there we are. Back again. All right. Frustrating when technology doesn't work, but that's all you can do. Right? You got to just deal with it. So welcome back, or welcome to the video chat. And again, the way these things work is we're going to be hanging out here, or I am. Harvey's going to hang out for as long as his attention span will last. And we're going to be answering questions about fitness, nutrition, exercise, any challenges you have with your workouts, with your eating plan, with your muscle building and fat loss goals, any topics of discussion related to that stuff. Feel free to type those into our video chat. And I know some people were posting in questions earlier. And,
no, just like the way you.
Okay. And if you posted in questions earlier to the chat, they got lost because I had to literally cancel that one out.
No.
And then it didn't come through. So we're starting off. Fresh start again with the video chat. Hopefully this one works. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. All right. Can you cross your fingers? Good job. All right. Well, I hope it works. All right. So let's jump into this. So basically, Daddy's just going to jump in and start answering some questions. And we'll take it from there. All right. Let's see. We have... We have Paul. When you're in your 60s, should you concentrate on strength or endurance? Obviously, this would apply for anybody. I mean, you could work on both.
Why can we not see the people?
We can't see the people because they're not on camera. We are. We're the ones on camera, buddy. Hey. All right. Here. Daddy's going to try and do a video chat. All right. So... just a second. Daddy's going to do some stuff here. And he's got a... all right. Here. Can you go on out in the room and Daddy will come out and play with you afterwards?
Why?
Well, because it's hard for me to answer questions. That's all. I'll come out and play with you in a few minutes. All right, guys. Sorry about the interruption there with the video stream freezing up earlier on. I mean, it was frustrating, but I know some people had some questions coming through earlier. And obviously, if you did that, I lost them. All right. So again, like I say, we're starting off fresh here. So let's see who's tuning in live right now. We've got YT joining in. We've got Fitness Dave. We've got Paul. We've got Lee. Who else we got in? Good stuff. All right. Just doing a bit of cleanup here, guys. Just give me a second here, and then I'll jump right into your questions. Good stuff. All right, so Paul's question there was a really good one. And he says, when you're in your 60s, should you focus on strength or endurance? And honestly, from a practical point of view, I would prioritize strength training, especially as you get older, because this is something... as your body ages, you naturally lose muscle, and it's a sarcopenia, like your muscles atrophy as you age, and you want to avoid that at all costs. And doing regular strength training will certainly help to minimize that. But another thing, it's not that you want to just prioritize strength and ignore endurance entirely. I mean, you want to do both. And I always refer to this as my yin and yang style of training, where I alternate cardio one day and strength training the next. And this allows you to get regular exercise, in fact, daily exercise, while still working within your body's natural recovery system. Because the strength training workouts, that's going to provide high intensity exercise, cause stress and demands on the muscles, the joints, tendons, and the ligaments, which is good. We want that stress because that's actually what's going to help to maintain your muscle tissue. I mean, when you're placing demands and stress on the muscles, that gives your body reason to maintain and actually build new muscle tissue. Because as the old saying goes, if you don't use it, you lose it, right? So we want to use it. We don't want to lose it. but then you can't do that day in and day out. You need to have some rest and recovery in between those strength training workouts. And this is where you can do some lower intensity cardio on your non-strength training days. And that's what I personally do myself. I like to go to the gym and do strength training one day, next day, alternate it with some lower intensity cardio. And it's a great way to keep yourself active and reap the benefits of both. So that's what I would recommend. But you definitely want to make sure that the strength training is in there, especially as you're getting older. Now, listen to your body. Like, strength is relative. Like, even when people say lifting heavy is relative, because, you know, what's heavy for one person may not be heavy for another. So, like, what's heavy for you? And the big thing that I want you to focus on is using proper form and lifting within your own means. And a good general rule of thumb with this is, if you get to the point where your form starts to break down with an exercise and you can't complete at least 5 repetitions with perfect form, like, that would be my max, 5 repetitions with perfect form. If you can't complete at least that many, the weight is way too heavy. Like, if you have to swing or cheat or anything to get at least 5 repetitions, it's way too heavy and you need to lighten the load. Ideally, you want to shoot for somewhere in that 10 repetition range for most people. That's a good benchmark. 10 reps with good form. And if you can complete more than that, then you want to focus on increasing the weight and staying in that range, right? The 10 rep range is a good range for overall hypertrophy and minimizing the risk of injury, right? So that, but again, it's a great question about what you should be prioritizing. All right. Dave has got a question there. I don't know if this is a real one or not, but I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. He says, I'm from the UK and I have a question. My friends are saying my butt is not straight. I don't know what you mean by that. Like, do you mean like you've got your back is arched or your butt sticks out or whatever? I mean, it could be some postural issues. It could be just the way that your body's laid out. I don't know. Without seeing pictures, and again, I'm not asking you to send me butt pictures, if you will, but without seeing what you're saying, I really can't answer that question. So if you have any questions about your posture, your spinal alignment, or anything like that, and it's a serious thing that you really are concerned about, get it checked out. Like, go talk to your doctor, go talk to a medical professional or a chiropractor or someone who deals with this, and see if there is anything wrong. Like, maybe you have some sort of curvature in your spine. Sometimes, you know, you can do things to help correct it. Other times you can't, right? Sometimes it's just genetic and you kind of have to deal with it and make the best of it. All right, moving on. Another question here. I'm just going to haul to the door there because Harvey's making a little bit of noise out of the room. All right, trying to get this done. All right. Another question came through here. This is from YT. Do hack squats tax, stress, or fatigue the lower back? It can, and it all depends on how it's set up. Now, it shouldn't be quite as bad with a hack squat because you do have a back support. But with that being said, there is still stress and load on the spine, because when you're in position and you have the shoulder pads, that is still placing stress on your body, still placing some compression. Not to the same degree as a barbell squat, but there is still some stress there. So if you do have any pre-existing back injuries, you may be able to work around them with a hack squat, but that's something you'll have to experiment and try. And different machines are going to feel, you know, different and due to the leverage, the mechanics, and everything else. Most hack squat machines, I'm not a huge fan of. I've got to be honest. I find that a lot of them are hard on the knee joints, and a lot of them, I personally find them a very awkward movement. Now, there are some that I have found that are really good. Hammer Strength has a hack squat machine that, instead of loading the weight on your shoulders, like with shoulder pads, it actually has an angled seat, and it's basically like a hip sled. So you would sit on the seat, and it kind of cups your lower back and your butt, and it's almost like an inverted leg press. That's basically what it is. And the stress is not on the back, but it's on the hips. And I actually found that to be a really good one. I haven't seen it very often, but several years ago, one of the gyms that I trained at had one of these Hammer Strength hip hack squats. And I found that was a really good one, especially for anybody who has back injuries. Another thing that you might want to look into if you do have some back injuries is hip belt squats. And I actually made a video demonstrating that, hip belt squats. So just, if you want to do a search after this video is over, open up a new YouTube window and do a search for like Lee Hayward hip belt squats. And that would be another variation that you can do that loads the weight on your hips and not on your back. So it's a great way to still get the benefits of squatting without placing any stress on the back. And that's something that we can all utilize from time to time, whether you got a back injury or not. Sometimes it's nice to train the legs without loading the spine. And that's why I'm a fan of things like the leg press and even the leg machines, like the leg extensions and the leg curls and all those, because sometimes you need to train the legs without placing excess strain on the spine, especially if you're doing other things that load the spine, such as deadlifts and overhead presses and things of that nature. So, sometimes you need to work around that without constantly just loading more pressure onto the back. All right, moving on. Let's see. Darren's joining in, and he's saying intermittent fasting, 16-8 diet ? I'm what do you want to know? Right? I've got videos on intermittent fasting already up on my YouTube channel. It can work for sure. I mean, from a fat loss point of view, but I'm not a fan of it. I have utilized it in the past, and I have gotten results in the past, but I'm not a fan of it from a muscle building point of view, and I'm certainly not a fan of it from an athletic performance point of view. From a strict weight loss point of view, it can help. Because any way you cut your calories, whether it's reducing the calories you eat per meal, reducing the number of meals you eat, however you create a calorie deficit, you can certainly tap into burning stored body fat. But the drawback with intermittent fasting is you're not giving your body the frequency that it needs throughout the day. Like there's a lot of missed opportunities for protein synthesis. It's not optimal for keeping your blood sugar and energy levels stable throughout the day. And if your main goal is building muscle or your main goal is athletic performance, this isn't ideal. And that's why I'm not a fan of intermittent fasting myself. I like to have more frequent meals throughout the day to keep the blood sugar level stable, to keep your appetite stable, and also create more opportunities for protein synthesis. Because it's most people that I talk to are wanting to build muscle and lose fat. Very few just want to lose weight, and I don't care if the weight comes from fat and muscle. Like very few people are in that situation. Like I just want to lose weight, and I don't care if I'm losing muscle as well as body fat. There are some, right? Obviously, but that's what often happens with intermittent fasting, right? You can easily lose lean muscle tissue as well because you're not getting that the same levels of protein synthesis throughout the day, right? Because every time you eat a meal of protein, that is an opportunity for protein synthesis, right? So I mean, if you go 16 hours a day, well, you just 16 hours a day where your body's literally in a catabolic state, right? And we don't want that if your main goal is athletic performance. That's why you'll see most athletes, most bodybuilders, most people will eat frequently throughout the day, right? Now, of course, there's always going to be some exceptions to the rule, but generally speaking, you will see people eating more frequently throughout the day. Is one cheat meal a day fine when trying to put on mass? When you're trying to put on mass, cheat meals are less detrimental because you can actually make it work, right? And the only thing I would caution with that is putting on too much body fat. That's the problem. But you need to look at the bigger picture. I mean, you could probably incorporate some cheat foods, if you will, into your day. And how I would incorporate that, and this is, I do the same thing, whether it's mass building, fat loss, or whatever. In fact, I don't like to think of bulking and cutting. I like to think of body recomposition. But how I would recommend incorporating cheat foods or treat foods, or however you want to call it, is don't obsess over it and don't purposely plan it out like, hey, this is a cheat meal or something like that. Just focus on eating clean, healthy foods most of the time. And if you are craving something, then give yourself permission to have whatever the heck it is that you want in moderation. And do so after you've already pre-filled your belly with the good stuff. So prime example, like if I want to have something, let's say I want to have some pizza. Well, I'm going to have some pizza. I'm not going to deny it, but I'm going to be smart about it. So I'm going to still fill up on the high nutrient, high volume foods first. So I'll still have, say, like some protein and some vegetables and the good stuff to nourish the body. And then after I've got that, then I'll have some pizza to satisfy that pizza craving or whatever craving it is. I mean, we could insert, anything in place of pizza. I mean, maybe, hey, I want to have a piece of cake. Well, I'm going to have my lean protein and veggies first, and then I'm going to have a little bit of cake afterwards to satisfy that craving. And by doing this, one, it ensures that you're getting the high nutrient dense foods in first, right? Your protein and your veggies. That should be the foundation of your meals, whether you're building mass or losing body fat. You always want to have the high nutrient dense foods that are going to nourish the body on the cellular level and give you the fuel you need, right? So you want that in there. And then you can satisfy the cravings afterwards. And by doing so, one, you'll pre-fill your belly, so you're not physically able to eat as much, and you'll get much more eating satisfaction with less of the junk food. And you'll still get to have the junk food satisfaction and craving. And the thing about cheap foods, more isn't better. Like when it comes to eating pizza, like after you have 1 or 2 slices of pizza, like you've got the craving of pizza out of your system. Eating more beyond that doesn't make it better. Like the third slice of pizza isn't going to taste any better than the second, right? Or the second slice of cake isn't going to taste any better than the first. So I'm a bigger fan of having smaller, more frequent cheats versus the big old binge type of cheat. And this is one thing that I used to do back in the day when I had my cheat day, because a lot of programs used to encourage that. Oh, you can eat whatever the heck you want on cheat day as long as you eat clean 6 days a week. And that's not true because you can do a lot of damage on a cheat day or even a full-on cheat meal. So I'm a bigger fan of just having smaller cheats throughout the week or whatever, like whenever I'm craving it. I don't pre-plan them because I just give myself the flexibility knowing that, hey, if I want it, I can have it. And by having that flexibility and not putting any restrictions around it, it actually makes you want it less. Because just look at it this way. What if I told you can never have pizza ever again, right? You're on a diet. You can't have pizza. It's a no-no. Then all of a sudden, like, you want pizza, right? Knowing you're not allowed to have it actually makes you want it more. But if I said you can have it whenever you want, then like the pressure's off. It's like, oh, well, I can have it whenever I want. I don't feel that urgency or that restriction, because it's available whenever you want it. And that's the way I look at my food. Like, I can eat whatever the heck I want. Like, there's no food police out there saying, hey, you're not allowed to eat this or whatever. Like, I can have whatever I want whenever I want it. But because I have that flexibility, I actually want it less. And that's the weird thing about that, right? It's kind of like the reverse psychology approach. And that's how I go about my meals, is I always focus on protein and veggies and high volume nutrient dense foods. And then if I am craving something, I'll give myself permission to have that in small portions frequently. And by doing so, I'm able to satisfy those cravings, get it out of my system, and then forget about it and move on without obsessing over it. Because if you deny the craving and deny yourself of cheat foods and then save it up for like a cheat day or something, or a cheat meal, very often you go overboard on those meals. Whereas if you just allow yourself to have a little bit in moderation, you can actually satisfy it with less damage done. And that's how I recommend doing it. And to give you an analogy of this, like, imagine someone who's super frugal with their money, right? Like they're clipping coupons and they're always buying the cheapest stuff. Like they're always super tight. Like, I'm very frugal with everything, and then they're saving money, frugal all month long. But then they go to Vegas for one weekend and they just go nuts on the slot machines and the blackjack table and everything else. And then they blow $10,000 in Vegas in one weekend. Well, all the coupon clipping and saving that they did, in the month leading up to that weekend in Vegas, like, that's like a fart in the wind. It's gone, because one weekend in Vegas, you could undo all the savings that you made throughout the month. The same applies with a cheat day, right? Like, you could be super strict with your diet, having a calorie deficit and eating clean and blah, 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 and doing everything great. And then have that big old dirty cheat day where you go on this big binge, and you can literally consume so much calories in that cheat day where you undo a full week of diet and exercise. And I've done that. I've been in that situation myself, and I see it so often where people come to me and say, I eat healthy. Why am I not losing weight? And then when we start to actually, go into detail, okay, tell me about your diet. What are you eating? Like, and everything else. And then they tell me, oh, I'm eating, egg whites and oatmeal and chicken and broccoli and blah, 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 and all the healthy foods. And I say, okay, well, what about on the weekend? What's your diet like on the weekend? Well, on the weekend, I cheat. Boom, right? That's your answer right there. That's why you're not losing weight, right? It's just the same as a person who's trying to save money, but then they go and they got their vice wherever. Maybe they blow it on, a week in Vegas, or maybe they got some other vice that they blow their money on. Like, all the savings that you did leading up to that, I mean, you could easily undo it in one big old binge. Same applies with food, right? So that's why you need to be think of the bigger picture and not just, you know, like, is it okay? I mean, you know, it really depends on the bigger picture of things. So hopefully that helps to put it in perspective for you. Let's see what else we've got. Eagle Eye John says, Lee, I had 3 weeks off of training and I lost 1/2 inch off my arms. I'm thin with no abs. Okay, well, taking time off training is certainly not going to help with that. But actually, there's I'm going to unpack that question a bit there. There's something there that I want to address. Just because you're skinny doesn't mean that you automatically are lean, or just because you're skinny doesn't mean you're automatically going to have abs. Like, you can still be skinny fat, and a lot of people are this way. And if you look at your physique and it's soft, right? Even if you are thin, like meaning you don't have the muscle mass on your frame that you want, if it's still soft, it means there's still excess body fat there, right? Like, and a good thing to do in this case is, like, even get a body fat test done, right? To kind of get a ballpark estimate of where your body fat's at. I mean, whether that's a caliper test or whatever you have available, or even these electronic body fat testers. If you are like over 15% body fat, which most people are, you're not going to have visible abs for the most part, unless, you know, you're just a genetic anomaly or whatever. Like, most guys have to get down to around 10% or less to have that lean defined physique. And I'm using these measurements as ballpark estimates because different body fat testers and different methods will give different readings. Like, for example, sometimes the electronic testers tend to give higher readings. Some of the caliper testers tend to give lower readings. But generally speaking, you know, you need to be in that 10% or less range to have a visible muscle of definition, to have visible abdominal definition. And if you're up into the teens or into the 20% body fat or more, it doesn't matter how thin you are, you're still going to have too much body fat to see the definition. That's right. So you need to look at body fat and not just like weight on the scale and saying, well, like a lot of people say, well, I'm not fat, right? I'm not fat. How come I can't see my abs? Well, okay, you're not fat, meaning you're not obese or you're not overweight, but you still have excess body fat, right? Like, there's a difference. And you need to actually look at the body fat that's on your frame. So in order to have that lean defined look, the skin has to be super thin, right? It has to be thin enough so that you can actually see the muscle definition underneath. And a lot of times people don't have that because they have that layer of body fat that's blurring their definition. So that's why you can't see your abs even though you are thin, right? You're thin, but there's still a layer of body fat there. What else we got there? Lockdown is joining us. He says, Lee, my grip is suffering in the gym. I'm pretty sure it's because I have been looking at girls, and you know what happens then. All right, moving on. Who is this? Who are you and why are you here? Is this a video? Okay. All right. We're getting a lot of... If you're new to the video chat, right? Welcome. Glad to have you tuning in. We got Raf joining in. Hello, Lee. What's your opinion about creatine and when's the best time to take it? All right, that's a solid question. When it comes to creatine, there is no special timing. Like, it's not a supplement that you have to take it before the workout or after the workout or anything like that. Timing is really irrelevant with creatine, because as long as you have creatine in your system, you're going to reap the benefits of it. So, I mean, you could take it morning, noon, or night, doesn't matter. It's just what it is you want to have optimal levels of creatine. It's almost like taking your vitamins. Like, it doesn't matter if you take your vitamins in the morning or in the evening, as long as you have adequate levels in your system to prevent a deficiency and you have optimal, then you're fine. Like, there's no special timing for vitamins. There's no special timing with creatine. It's not like a pre-workout where you have, take it before the workout and so it kicks in at a certain time and everything else. Like, creatine doesn't work like that. It's just having enough creatine in your system to saturate your cells so that they have optimal levels to reap the results. And generally speaking, for most guys, somewhere in the range of 5 grams of creatine per day is more than enough to do that. Right? Like, you could probably even get away with less, but just ballpark numbers, 5 grams of creatine taken daily whenever it's convenient for you. I personally take creatine just like I take my vitamins. So when I take my vitamins, I just take a scoop of creatine along with it. And that's how I do it. And I've been doing that for years. right? I don't plan it out with a timing because it's not like rapidly released into your system or nothing like that. It's just one of those things. As long as you have adequate levels in your system and you sustain those levels over time, you're going to reap the benefits of creatine. All right. Okay, let's just see here now. A second, guys. I just got to clue up a couple things here. All right. Okay. What are your thoughts on single dumbbell kneeling squats for quads? I've never done a single dumbbell kneeling squat, so no opinion. I'd even have to look that up because I'm thinking about it. A single dumbbell kneeling squat. I'm a big fan of squats. Like, I don't overcomplicate the exercises, like a regular barbell squat, back squat or front squat, hack squat, something like that, or even a goblet squat for that matter. That's fine. But I've never done a single dumbbell kneeling squat. So you got me stumped on that one. Richard's joining. Richard's a member of the Muscle After 40 Blueprint, and I was actually just chatting to him earlier today on a coaching call. He says, I'm using the Versa grips as a grip aid in the row/pulling exercises. Is this a negative for building grip strength in the long run? Versa grips, is that like a strap or grip reinforcement? I'm just going to do a quick search here. I've heard of them before. I don't have it set myself. Give me a second. I just want to do a quick Google search. Yes. Okay. It's basically a hook, right? It's like another variation of a lifting strap. All right. That's what I thought it was. Is that a negative? No, it's not. But when it comes to straps and any type of grip aid, you want to use it appropriately. So in my case, if I'm going to use lifting straps, or if I had Versa grips, the same thing would apply. Do all your warm-up sets and exercises where your grip is not a limiting factor without any grip aid. All right, and I'm going to give you an exception to the rule afterwards, but this is the general rule of thumb. If your grip is not the limiting factor, do not use any straps or grip reinforcement. So, for example, like if bicep curls, even some lighter rowing exercises and things like that, if you have the grip strength, I would recommend using your raw grip because you want to build up your grip strength. Like, that is a very important part of the whole process. But for bigger exercises, shrugs, deadlifts, heavy rows, chin-ups, something along those, or pull-ups, if you find that your grip is giving out before your back, then you can utilize the straps or the grip support as a tool to help get extra repetitions. And how I would recommend it is save it for your heavy working sets. So in my case, like, let's just say I'm going to do a deadlift workout. I will do all my progressively heavier warm-up sets with no straps at all. I would just do it with my raw grip to build up my grip strength. But then as the weight starts to build up, my grip is going to become more of a limiting factor. And when I feel the point where my grip is the weak link, then I would use straps or Versa grips or some sort of grip reinforcement so that I can continue on and actually fatigue the target muscle, which is in this case the back, without my grip being the weak link, because the back is stronger than your grip. Same with shrugs. Like, you can do your progressively heavier warm-up sets, but then once it gets to the point where the grip is the limiting factor and the weak link, then you would add that in there to take the set to so you can actually work the targeted muscle to its full capacity. And that's what I would recommend. So that's how I use them myself. But whenever possible, don't use the grip reinforcement or the straps, because you do want to build up your natural grip strength. Another tool you might want to look into as well is lifting chalk. Lifting chalk helps to dry up the sweat on your hand, and it increases friction between your skin and the barbells, dumbbells, handles, whatever it is you're lifting. So it doesn't seem like much, but it makes a huge difference. And this is why powerlifters and weightlifters and gymnasts use chalk, is because it has a huge impact on your grip. You'll really reinforce your grip just by having the sweat dried up and increased friction, right? It'll help to reinforce your grip that way. So that's something you can look into as a tool as well. Only drawback with chalk is it's a bit messy, and some gyms don't like it, right? So, I mean, right, it's easy to clean up, but of course, then you get some guys in there using chalk and they're not cleaning up after themselves. So it does leave the white powdery mess all over the place. But it is a powerful tool to help reinforce your grip and still build your natural grip strength. But again, you don't want to abuse straps. And I was guilty of this in the past, because once I found out about straps, then I used them for everything. I used them for all my warm-up sets. Anytime I did any type of rows or anywhere where my grip came into play, I was reinforcing it with straps. And yeah, it was great from building up the back and on all those muscle groups. But then what happened is my grip became very weak. And I didn't even realize it until I decided to start competing in powerlifting. And this was back in the early 2000s, around 2005, that range. That's when I was really focusing on powerlifting. And, in powerlifting, you're not allowed to use straps. So then I was trying to, test my deadlift strength. And I realized, man, like I can deadlift a lot of weight, but I can't hold on to the darn weight. So my grip was the weak link. And what I did to really reinforce that afterwards is I started using heavy grips hand grippers. And show you, I actually have a set right here. This was something that I started using years ago, and it really helped to speed up my grip strength and grip training. So I prioritized this back in the early 2000s, around the same time when I was competing in powerlifting. And this allowed me to allow my grip to catch up to the rest of my body, because again, I made that imbalance by overusing the straps. So it's like a double-edged sword. It's a powerful tool, but it can actually be a downside if you overuse it, right? Because you don't want to have that weak link in your grip. Now, to compensate for that, you can do some specific grip training in addition to using the straps, like I did with the heavy grips hand grippers. Now, the only time when this advice I would counteract it is if you're dealing with any form of elbow tendonitis. Like if you have tennis elbow or golfer's elbow or something like that, using grips like the Versa grips or the lifting straps, it may allow you to work around the tendonitis issue and reduce the pain, because you don't have to grip as hard. And by not gripping as hard, you actually ease up some of the stress on the tendons in the tendonitis, right? Like forearms, like tennis elbow, golfer's elbow, that stuff. So it could be a tool to help you in the rehab process to work around tendonitis. And actually one of my coaching students, Justin, I was actually chatting with him earlier today as well. And that's what he's doing. He's suffering from some elbow tendonitis. And that's one of the strategies that we have him doing, is for all his rowing exercises and even his curling exercises as well. He's using lifting straps, because by doing that, he doesn't have to grip as hard. And by not gripping as hard, he's actually able to reduce some of the inflammation and stress that's placed on the tendons and allow that tendonitis to heal. Because that's one of the biggest things when it comes to rehab and tendonitis, is to avoid aggravating it and actually let it heal. So trying to find ways to work around it to the best of your ability. And that's one strategy you can use for that. All right. Great question. Appreciate you for sharing. We have Darren joining in. He says, my current regimen is 1 gym workout per week, 1 ruck walk per week, other days just normal walking. Is this enough for a 49-year-old? It's better than nothing. And this is what I'm going to say. Something is always better than nothing, right? Something is always better than nothing. So, I mean, is it optimal? Not really. I would prefer more frequent training than that. Like ideally, when it comes to gym workouts, I'm 3 times a week would probably be ideal, because that gives you more frequency in the gym and working, to maximize your strength development. As far as walking, I mean, that's fine. That's you can do daily walking. Like as long as you feel up for it, by all means do it. Like low intensity exercise like walking is so underrated from a health point of view, from a fat loss point of view, general fitness. Like if we could bottle up the benefits of an hour-long walk into a pill, it'd be the most prescribed pill in the world. It's so powerful. So, I mean, I'm a huge advocate of just regular movement such as walking, right? So, I mean, do that by all means. Keep that in there. But as far as the strength training, if you can increase that, I would certainly recommend, especially as you're getting older, because like one of the guys mentioned earlier, it was Paul asking about, prioritizing strength into his 60s. The same applies for someone like yourself now when you're 49 years old, pushing 50. As you're getting older, you would definitely want to prioritize the strength to minimize muscle loss as you age, right? To keep your body strong and healthy. I mean, it's not just from the muscle point of view, but keep your joints, tendons, and ligaments and your bone health. I mean, your mobility, that's so powerful. Now, again, one gym workout a week is good, but it could be better, right? And one thing you want to look at, it doesn't necessarily have to be strength training at the gym. So, I mean, if you have some exercise equipment at home, even if it's resistance bands and body weight exercises, maybe you could incorporate some of that into your workouts as well. And if you just do a search on my YouTube channel, I do have some home workouts using like resistance bands and dumbbells that you can incorporate. So if due to your schedule, like you can only get to the gym once a week, well, that's fine. Take advantage of that. But then on your days off from the gym, maybe you could incorporate some strength training at home as well to just get more of the strength training benefits into your routine. That's what I would personally recommend. Right? The optimal range, I would say, is 3 strength training workouts per week. All right. Let's see what else we've got. Jose is saying, what are your thoughts on Mark Rippetoe's starting strength program? Do you believe he teaches his clients good form on lifts like squats and deadlifts, or are his teachings insufficient? I've learned a lot from Mark Rippetoe, and I've watched a lot of his videos and stuff, and generally speaking, I agree with what he's teaching. I mean, like he's obviously very experienced and knows what he's doing when it comes to powerlifting, but you got to realize he is gearing his training for powerlifters. So if that's what you want to focus on, your priority is powerlifting, then by all means, go for it. You know, follow powerlifters, right? If you want to be a powerlifter, you listen to powerlifters and do what powerlifters do. If you want to be a bodybuilder, then you follow bodybuilders and you do what bodybuilders do. If you just want general health and fitness, then you have to find people who are prioritizing general health and fitness and do what they're doing. So it applies, it's sport specific. Right. So that's one of the things you need to realize with Mark is he's sport specific to strength and powerlifting. And a lot of his techniques, I mean, certainly do work. I mean, he's achieved great success himself. He's achieved great success with these students and stuff. So, yeah, I mean, I definitely am and agree with a lot what he says. I mean, of course, there's some stuff there that I don't agree with. I mean, but it's not necessarily right or wrong. It's just like I personally don't do it because I'm not a powerlifter. Right. So that's why I wouldn't apply everything that he covers into my own training, or if people I'm working with who are not powerlifters, I'm not going to have them doing powerlifting workout programs. But overall, I mean, I got to say the guy knows his stuff. He's been around for years, and you know, I've learned a lot from him myself. Right, I've watched a lot of his stuff, read a lot of his material, and for the most part, yeah, I would agree with what he has. Let's see what else we got. Steve is joining in. We have No Name. Well, welcome, No Name. What about a jar of peanut butter for a cheat day? That would be a big no-no. Like, first off, why a freaking jar of peanut butter? Like, you can have some peanut butter if you really enjoy peanut butter. Like, hey, okay, have some peanut butter on your bread or peanut butter on your whatever. Like, you know, actually, I like putting like peanut butter on like on bananas or on celery sticks and stuff like that. Sometimes I'll have like peanut butter toast. Or maybe I'll even mix up like high protein pudding and throw in a spoonful of peanut butter in with it, or sometimes even with a blender smoothie because I just like peanut butter. But peanut butter is super calorie dense, and more isn't better, right? Like once you get the taste of peanut butter, like you might be able to satisfy that with a few spoonfuls. Why do you need the whole freaking jar, right? Unless the jar is super, super tiny, which I kind of doubt. I would not recommend that. Like that would be, depending on the size of the jar, that could be thousands of calories for what? So no. What I would recommend, if you're a huge fan of peanut butter, get the powder peanut butter. Like PB2 or PB and Me are a couple popular ones, but just search for powder peanut butter. You can you can order it online, or you might be able to find it in like the health food section at your grocery store. It's not the same as regular peanut butter, but it's a nice alternative, and it's way lower in calories, way lower in fat. It's got about 85% of the fat removed. And what I do with it is I'll get the powder peanut butter, and basically it's like dehydrated peanut butter. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, it's a dehydrated peanut butter, and you put like a couple spoonfuls of the powder into like a bowl, add a little tiny bit of water to rehydrate it, and you stir it up. and then it basically has the same consistency as peanut butter, but it's much lower in fat. Again, like 85% of the fat is removed. So you're still getting the peanut butter taste, but you're not getting all the fat, and that's much lower in calories. So you can actually enjoy larger servings of the powdered peanut butter variation and get more peanut butter satisfaction, if you will. And a little trick that I do to make it taste even better is when I'm mixing it up, I'll put in some salt. So like sprinkle in a little bit of salt, whatever you fancy, whether it's sea salt or pink Himalayan salt or whatever, or table salt, doesn't matter. Salt is salt. Put in a few shakes of salt, because most store-bought jars of peanut butter do have salt in it. And I also get a packet of stevia, and I'll throw in there because, again, most store-bought peanut butter has sugar and salt, which gives it a nice taste, right? So I'll put in some salt, and I'll put in a packet of stevia. So this is 0 calories, or very low, or just trace amounts of calories, but it adds a lot of flavor. It gives it that sweet and salty and peanutty taste. And then I'll mix it up with the water, and it's almost as good as the real thing. Now, again, it's not 100% as good, but it's good enough. It's good enough to satisfy the craving and minimize the damage. So this is how I get my peanut butter fix without blowing the diet and without, gaining a lot of fat and empty calories in the process. So that's a little strategy you can certainly use if you are a fan of peanut butter. All right, what else we got there? Let's see. All right, thanks for the super chat tip there, Jose. You're very welcome. Okay, what else we got there? Actually, I'm just thinking about that powdered peanut butter. I have some videos up on I know I posted them up on Facebook covering that. I might have some on my YouTube channel as well, but that's something I'm due to make is a new full day of eating video. I've got a couple up on my YouTube channel now, but I'm going to be sharing some more of those. But those are simple little tricks that can make a big difference, right? And that's what it's all about, is finding ways that you can enjoy eating your favorite foods and minimize the damage. And that's how you make a sustainable eating plan where you get to enjoy the process without feeling like you're on a diet. And like that powdered peanut butter trick with the stevia and the salt, I mean, that's just one of many little tricks that you can use to help make the process easier and more enjoyable. Moving on, let's see what else we got there. All right, thanks, Darren, for the super chat tip. Much appreciated, and I will keep it up. Let's move on. What other questions we got there? Pogie Boots. Gotta love the name, Pogie Boots. Congrats on the January 400-kilometer challenge on Strava. It's not easy to complete in the winter. Lots of great cardio. Newfoundland looks like a dream to ride. Thanks. Okay, obviously you're following me over on Strava, and for those of you, I have a Strava account. If you don't know what Strava is, it's basically a tool that we use for tracking more endurance training. I mean, you can track weight training and everything else there, but I use it for tracking my cycling. And I got to be honest there, Mr. Pogie Boots, I do have an indoor trainer, so there some of my mileage, if you will, is indoors on the indoor trainer as well. Like I race on Zwift as well as doing fat biking outside. But you're absolutely right. It's hard to rack up miles outside in the wintertime. I did some today. I actually went for a ride in Pippi Park with my wife, riding some of the fat bike trails. It's slow going, but it's so much fun, right? I love just fat biking in the snow. And if you follow me over on Facebook, I got a whole bunch of pictures in that. I usually share some pictures of my rides, but that is a ton of fun. I mean, again, it's not fast by any stretch of the imagination, but it is so much fun. And you can go so many places on a fat bike in the wintertime in the snow that you'd never get to in the summertime, right? Like, especially you get a good packed snow trail. It's so much fun to just get out there and explore. And with that being said, if you're not following me over on Facebook and you have a Facebook account, friend me up. Send me a friend request over on Facebook. And then as you send me a friend request, also send me a message. Just say, hey, I follow you on YouTube and I'd like to be friends on Facebook or something like that. Just let me know. Always nice to connect with people. And that's the cool thing about Facebook is it's a two-way conversation, whereas YouTube is kind of just a one-way conversation. All right. We got Alex is joining and he says, flat I've done flat benches for years, but I'd like to try incline. However, I've been told they are risky for the shoulder. Is it true? And how would you recommend to do them safely? That's not true. And it really depends on your individual mobility. I actually find incline bench presses easier on the shoulders and less risk of injury than the flat bench press. Now, that's just me and my mobility and everything else, but I actually find that actually it's easier. And there's less risk of injury, I find, with an incline bench than a flat bench. Part of the reason is because it's not the same ego exercise. You're less tempted to do the 1 rep max incline bench than you are the 1 rep max flat bench. So that has a big reason to do for the lower risk of injury. But I actually find the incline position works better. So like, for example, when I'm doing dumbbell flies, I actually prefer an incline fly versus a flat fly. I actually get more muscle activation in the upper chest, and I find that it actually feels better on my shoulder joint when I have the bench set at an incline. Now, not a super steep incline, but maybe between 30 to 45 degrees in that range, somewhere if it's an adjustable bench, I'll have it like 45 will be the max, or even a little lower than that. And I find it actually works really well. So my advice to you is try it and see how it feels. Now, obviously start light, just kind of go through the motions, get used to the exercise and the different body position, play around with whatever bench settings there are. Because again, you have to adjust the seat angle and the seat height, to make sure that you're in the proper position to on-rack the weight. And that's the only tricky part when it comes to incline benching versus flat benching is with the flat bench, it's really easy to set yourself up at the right position underneath the barbell for on-racking it. Whereas with an incline bench, it may not always be as easy, right? Like sometimes, depending on the length of your torso and the way the bench is set up, it may feel like it's too far to reach, or it may feel like it's too low. So that's the only drawback. Whereas with a flat bench, obviously you just slide your body back and forth till you get the right position. With the incline, you have that seat in the bottom, right? And that, depending on the adjustability of the seat, it may not be as comfortable. So another option that you could even do as well, and I've done this in the past, is slide a dumbbell bench, meaning one without the uprights, slide an adjustable incline bench into a power rack. And sometimes I can get the perfect position that I need for the uprights for on-racking the weight. So I'll literally do my incline bench presses in the power rack. That's something you might want to experiment with as well. But from the injury point of view and the shoulders and everything else, it's a personal preference thing. And some people may actually find it easier on the shoulders. And I'm one of those people. I actually find the incline bench easier on the shoulders than the flat, right? I've pulled and strained my rotator cuff and everything else, and had some injuries with flat benching over the years. But knock on some wood, I've never had any injuries with incline benching, right? So I've found that it's actually a safer variation for me. So my advice, try it, but start light and experiment and just build it up gradually, and don't be in a rush. The big thing is you're going to lift lighter on an incline than you will with flat, just due to the mechanics and the body position. The incline is weakest, the flat is going to be stronger, and then the decline is generally strongest, just due to the leverage and body mechanics. Now, again, there's going to be exceptions to the rule depending on people's leverages and mobilities, but most people are going to be weakest with the incline, middle with the flat, and strongest with the decline. All right, moving on. What else we got there? Richard saying, thanks for the answer, Lee. I gotta go to sleep. All right, good night. Richard's joining in from over in Sweden. So good night, my friend. Have a good one. Sleep tight. Raf is asking, what are my thoughts on the behind the neck press? I have utilized it in the past, but I'm not a big fan of it. I find that is pretty hard on shoulder mobility to do a behind the neck press. What I will do, however, which is kind of a behind the neck press variation, is I like to do Bradford presses. And if you're not familiar with what a Bradford press is, well, then just Google or YouTube search Lee Hayward Bradford press, because I got videos showing how to do it. But it's basically, it's more of a shoulder mobility exercise than a power exercise, but it's alternating pressing to the front and to the back of the head. And you don't lock out your elbows in between reps. So you would literally take the barbell, press, and just like clear your head. and keep the elbow soft in between repetitions. That's the way it would work. And I do that as a mobility and a warm-up exercise. And it's really good for shoulder health and mobility, but you use light weight. Like I would use the empty barbell and just do Bradford presses with the empty barbell. And sometimes I would even do it as a finisher at the end of a shoulder workout, just for high repetitions to kind of just burn out the muscles and to get a good pump. But I'm not a fan of anything heavy behind the neck, because heavy weight and that, that really mobility where you got your shoulders extended back that far places a lot of stress on the joints, tendons, and ligaments, and it opens up the risk of injury. So a heavy low rep behind the neck press, I would not do it. It's the risk to reward is not in your favor, in my opinion. All right. So I would, if you do use it as a light mobility exercise, but don't use it as a heavy power move. Right. That's my 2 cents worth on it. All right. And you say you like them a lot. Well, if you like them and they work for you, then go for it. But like I say, you asked my thoughts on it, and I just shared my opinion on it. And this is something you're going to, like, when it comes to strength training and nutrition and everything else, you got to realize we're all unique. Everyone's going to have their own opinions. And I'm not one of these people who say, like, hey, my way is the only way. I don't ever believe that, right? Like, because if you do a behind the neck press and it works for you, you like it, it feels good and everything else, like, who am I to argue, right? If it works for you, by gosh darn it, then do it. But it doesn't work for everybody. And, that applies with a lot of the stuff. Like someone was asking earlier, like about Mark Rippetoe and his powerlifting techniques. Do I agree with it? For the most part, yeah, especially if you're a powerlifter. But do I agree with it if you're not a powerlifter? No. So you got to look at everything from the bigger picture context. And there's more than one way of going about this, right? Some people get great results with certain styles of training or certain styles of eating. Other people get great results with other styles. And the way that I focus on things now is I'm looking at long-term sustainability and getting the most benefit for the minimal effort and doing so safely with the least risk of injury. And like, for example, in my case, I think like a press to the front of the head is a safer variation, less risk of injury, and it gets just as much benefit for the most part as it would if you were doing a press behind the head. All right, so that's why I'm not a big fan of it. But I do like to do presses with either dumbbells or presses to the front, because I find those to be safe and effective. Let's see what else. Alex saying, thanks for the advice and suggestions, and I would be doing them in a power rack. Good stuff. So yeah, that's a smart move. I mean, if possible, doing your bench presses, shoulder presses, any type of presses, if you can do them in a power rack with the safety pins, that's just an added element of safety, especially if you're training by yourself, right? I mean, like if you're training with spotters, it's kind of optional, but especially if you're training by yourself, take advantage of the power rack. Laura's joining in saying, how could you do a pull-up to modify? Modify what? If you're there, Laura, elaborate on your question. And I'm getting a lot of other comments. I don't know if it's a foreign language or what it is, but I'm sure those of you who are watching the chat right now, you're seeing these just letters and popping up, and I don't even know what they are. I mean, just for the record, if you haven't already noticed, I'm an English-speaking YouTuber. So if you're typing in another language, I don't know what you're saying. Right? This is an English video chat. So anything that's typed in a foreign language, I'm going to just remove. No offense to anybody who speaks foreign languages. It's just, hey, I can't speak it. All right. And I'm just going to hide that one. I'm just deleting some irrelevant comments there. All right. So Laura's saying, how do you do a pull-up modify? I don't have a bar. Okay, if you don't have a pull-up bar, well, it's set one up. I mean, like you can get pull-up bars pretty inexpensively. I mean, you can get the doorway ones. Then pretty much any sporting goods store should sell those doorway pull-up bars. And depending on your living situation, you might be able to rig up some sort of pull-up bar pretty inexpensively and simple. I mean, I remember before we developed our basement and it was just unfinished, you could see the rafters in the ceiling of the basement. And I just took a plain old metal pipe and I strung it from the rafters in the basement, and I was doing pull-ups from the rafters in my basement ceiling for years. I did that. I mean, it was very simple, literally just a metal pipe braced up into the rafters, and that was my pull-up bar for many years. Then finally, when we actually developed the basement and put in a proper home gym down there, well, now I have the pull-up bar with my power rack that I do pull-ups from. But you can probably set something up, or you can buy yourself a doorway pull-up bar, and they're not very expensive. Again, any type of sporting goods store or Amazon, whatever, just start doing searches for it. You can get pull-up bars, and that's how you would set one up. But in the meantime, if you don't have pull-up bars, I mean, you can do other exercises to work the same muscle instead. So if you're at the gym or something, you have a lat pull-down station, you can utilize that. If you have resistance bands, you can utilize that. You can duplicate that overhead pulling motion. In fact, I even have some videos up on my YouTube channel showing how you can duplicate a lot of gym machines using resistance bands. All right, and that's another variation you have. But again, hopefully that answers your question. All right. Well, I think that's actually all the questions that came through. I know today's chat was a bit of a weird one because we started off with a great turnout of people. And then, of course, when the stream froze and I had to quit the chat, I lost at least half the people. So obviously, a lot of the questions didn't come through. But for those of you, the hardcore regulars who actually tuned in, well, hopefully you enjoyed it, and hopefully you got some benefit from today's video chat. I enjoy doing them, and the replay of this will be posted up immediately afterwards, but I'm also going to put the timestamps in for all the specific questions, so if you would like to review it afterwards, you can certainly do so. And just a heads up, for all the past video chats that I've did, you can open up the video description of those video chats, and you'll see a list of all the questions and topics that were covered. So if there's anything specific that you would like to jump to, you can literally jump to the timestamps to get to those specific questions without having to listen to the entire video chat if you don't want to. So there you go, guys. Have yourself a wonderful weekend, and I will be back again here next week with another video chat, same time, same place. Have yourself a good one. Take care. Over and out.